Hello everyone, this is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only, here with another exciting video, and in this video I'm going to be looking at Zatanna's DC Universe Encyclopedia article. I'm going to read over the entire article and give you my thoughts on it. If you guys are excited, make sure you smash that like button, and if you guys haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because I do AI Dungeon 2 videos every day, and I also occasionally dip into some superheroes and comic book style content. Without further ado, let's get started. So today we're going to be talking about Zatanna. The magic never stops when it comes to famed stage conjurer and real-life princess of prestidigitation, Zatanna Zatara. Aliases, Zatanna Zatara, or Z. First appearance, Hawkman number 4, 1964. Right off the bat, Z is something that I hear John Constantine call Zatanna a lot. And I was surprised when I originally learned that she first appeared in a Hawkman book, but we'll dive into that a little bit more later as we continue through the article. It's not often that the day and night jobs of a DC superhero line up perfectly, but for Zatanna Zatara, that's exactly the case. A skilled performer, Zatanna works as a famous stage magician, but when she's not entertaining, she works as a real magician performing impossible feats to save the world. Now, to comment on that real quick, that actually is kind of interesting. It would be fascinating if that was the norm. If a lot of superheroes were like, by day, I'm like a pretend version of myself. And by night, I'm like the actual character. Like, imagine if characters like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, for their day job, were like actors in superhero movies. Like, they play the part of a superhero on the big screen, but then in reality they are also like that superhero in real life, because it would give you like a lot of like leeway, I guess. If someone catches you with your Superman outfit, you could say, oh, well, I'm not the real Superman, like I'm just getting ready to go in for a rehearsal, or oh, I was practicing my lines when you caught me in my room in my superhero outfit, like kind of thing. I just feel like it's actually a pretty good cover. And when people say stuff like, you look just like Superman, you could say, well, yeah, I play him in the movies, kind of thing. Like, it kind of all works out if you do it like that. So I do think that is something that kind of makes Zatanna a little special. The fact that her secret identity and her superhero identity are very similar to each other, to the point where, you know, if you saw Zatanna even use her powers in public or something, people would just assume it's a magic trick and not that she actually has magical powers. Like, it is like a pretty cool cover. The daughter of a mystical being named Cindella and famed illusionist Giovanni Zatara, Zatanna grew up respecting both showmanship and the magic arts. By simply speaking her commands backward, she can cast any spell, from manifesting objects to teleporting herself across the world, and sometimes far beyond it. So, Zatanna's powers are part of what Zatanna is incredibly famous for. The fact that if she says something backwards, it happens. I feel like Zatanna is an extremely powerful character because her abilities are essentially the ability to just have like any wish you want granted, but you grant the wish yourself. Like, her powers aren't that different from someone like Jakeem Thunder, who just has a genie and he just wishes for stuff from the genie. The only difference is that she just has to say her thing backwards, and she doesn't have to say, like, I wish or anything like that. And she can phrase her wishes exactly the way she wants, as long as she can, like, say them backwards properly. So I'm very curious to see how Zatanna works in film. She's supposedly getting a movie soon, so I'm not sure how well she'll be able to fit within the world of the current DCEU with such all-powerful abilities. Origin. Zatanna's father, Giovanni Zatara, was a famous performer who fell in love with a woman named Cindella, a member of a mystical race of beings known as Homo Magi. The couple's only child, Zatanna, was born with fantastic abilities, but she was unaware of her unusual heritage or her powers until tragedy struck and her father disappeared. Now, I do think the concept of like the Homo Magi is kind of weird. It's a thing in the DC universe where essentially there's like a race of humans who just are inherently magical and possess magic abilities. It's interesting that that exists, but then there are also characters, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, who aren't Homo Magi but still use real magic. Like her father Zatara is able to use real magic, but he's not a homo magi. They actually go really far to like show you Zatara is human and Cinderella is not, kind of thing. So where do you draw the line, I guess, between a human who can do magic and like a homo magi? Because like how do you determine that someone's a homo magi, I guess? Is it like a gene similar to the whole like metagene concept where if you looked at someone's DNA, you would be like, yeah, they're not human. They're like a homo magi. If it's like you grow up and you're able to use magic at a young age, I feel like that wouldn't determine anything because I feel like a human could also just grow up and be particularly skilled at magic, just as a human could grow up and at a young age be a prodigy in any other skill, like 5-year-olds who can like play the piano without ever being taught, kind of thing. So I don't know. Maybe it's because it's like a lineage thing. Like it's not just that you were able to use magic at a young age, but your kids also were able to. But I'm sure since it's magic based, it's probably something where it's like Homo Magi have a certain aura that like even humans that use magic don't have. Like there's probably some magical way to tell. But it is interesting to have a race in your world that's just magic human, and the only difference between them and normal humans is that they're magic, but humans can also use magic, kind of thing. Seems really odd. Also, it's interesting that Zatanna's so powerful, considering the fact that she's like a half breed. Like she's like a hybrid of like a human and like a homo magi, and she's able to essentially do whatever she wants by speaking backwards. I'm curious what are the limitations on like full-blooded homo magi, like her mother, Cinderella. Does her mother do a similar thing where she talks backwards and then whatever she says happens? Or is she so good since she's maybe a full-blooded homo magi? Because I don't really know what her lineage is. But say like let's say that she is like a full-blooded homo magi. Can she say things normally and they just happen? Like she can just like manifest stuff with her voice? Because that would be pretty cool. But you would think that Zatanna would probably be weaker than like a full-blooded homo magi, unless there's some interesting combination that happens where when the two come together, they actually end up being stronger. That would be fascinating too. But let's see if we learn anything about that as we continue reading through the article. Having grown up to become an accomplished stage magician, Zatanna began traveling the globe in search of her father when her innate abilities awakened within her. As she traveled, she perfected her craft and practiced using her powers, while meeting superheroes like Hawkman, Green Arrow, and the Elongated Man. Eventually, her newfound friends invited her to join the Justice League of America. So, she grows up, and only then do her innate abilities awaken within her. Now, she is a half-breed. She's not like full homo magi. But this adds to my whole thing of like, what's the difference between like a human who can use magic and a homo magi that supposedly is innately magical? You know what I mean? Because in the same way that she's like studying to develop her powers, couldn't you just have like a human who grows up and then they like learn how to cast a spell and then they like study? Maybe it's the fact that she has a innate ability to begin with, you know, because but again that goes back to the whole piano thing, like the concept of like having a child prodigy who's just skilled at something without any prior training. I wonder how hard it would be for like a human in the DC universe to be like, oh, I just casted a spell one day and I never was taught about spells. I just know like a little bit about spells. I'm just innately skilled. I don't know. It could have to do with like you finding it intuitive. Like it's like, no one ever taught me how to do spell casting, but for some reason it just seemed right. Like if I did this and this and this, that I would get this outcome, kind of thing. But it seems like a really arbitrary thing to have for a species, I guess. Like for it to be your mystical race is just humans with magic. If you're not going to then lock it down where only Homo Magi can use magic. Because then it would be like a really hard definitive tell. You know, like there would be like a solid difference between the two. But since humans can also use magic, it seems really odd to differentiate the two. Anyways, jumping into powers and abilities. Half human and half homo magi, Zatanna is able to cast magical spells by saying any phrase backwards. That's actually an important distinction, saying that, like, she can say anything backward. There's no limitation on what the phrase is. These spells can do any number of things, such as create objects, teleport people, heal herself and others, and generate powerful bursts of energy to wield as weapons. In addition to her verbal commands, Zatanna is able to cast certain spells by writing them out, though she typically still needs to write them backwards, and in rare instances, she can cast spells by speaking normally. Now, the casting spells by speaking normally thing is kind of interesting, because they're saying sometimes Zatanna could just say something like, go away, and you just get teleported away, but it's rare. That sounds kind of scary. Like, I wonder if Zatanna has ever, like, accidentally, while just talking to someone, maybe made a hyperbolic statement and then it just, like, manifested kind of thing. Because at least by having your power be based on speaking backwards, you have a lot of control over activating your power, because of the fact that you need to intentionally speak words backwards. Though there are instances where you could be saying a palindrome or something, to which then, what's the difference between saying it backwards and saying it forward? There just isn't one. You would think that it would be based on intention, so maybe she can't accidentally cast a spell, but I'm not entirely sure. But her ability to create objects and teleport people and, like, heal herself, and if you look at what the intro said, it mentions that she can teleport herself across the world and sometimes far beyond it. It seems like if Zatanna, in her movie, has to fight somebody, what keeps Zatanna from, like, doing a BFR, as you call it, a battlefield removal, where essentially you're fighting someone and they seem, like, so powerful, it's like Doomsday or something, it's, like, gonna just kill you. What keeps her from, like, saying backwards for him to, like, be teleported into a black hole or something? You know, if you have the ability to teleport yourself or others, and you can do so at, like, a huge range where you could teleport them really anywhere you wanted and even just to another world, then why don't you? And you may be thinking, well, in the heat of a battle against someone like Doomsday, you know, Zatanna would probably get ripped to shreds before she could even say anything. But then that leads me to say, well, why doesn't Zatanna just kind of, like, chill then? She seems like the kind of person who could be, like, the person behind the computer and the superhero at the same time. Like, you know how Oracle in DC Comics is like, oh, I'm, like, checking all the crime feeds and I'm letting superheroes know that, like, oh, Doomsday's attacking Metropolis, we need to send, like, Martian Manhunter or something. You know, she's, like, keeping everyone informed of what's happening and monitoring, like, police radios and stuff. It seems like Zatanna could do that. And if she was like, oh, Doomsday's attacking Metropolis, she could then, without going anywhere, be like, Doomsday gets sent into a black hole, but she just says it backwards, and then it's like, oh, hey, he's in a black hole now. Oh, we did it. You know, like, it doesn't seem like she has to go anywhere. She could, like, telecommute being a superhero. Because she just seems kind of powerful, like a little too powerful, maybe for a suspenseful movie. We'll have to see. Let's continue through this section. Besides possessing genuine magic powers, Zatanna is an accomplished stage performer, skilled at tricks and practical illusions. Makes sense. Essential storylines. Zatanna was introduced on a quest to find her missing father, an adventure that began in Hawkman number 4 and wove through other titles like Adventure Comics, The Atom, and Action Comics. Her search brought her face to face with some of DC Universe's most famous superheroes. Now, this could actually be pretty cool. Like, if they made this story her movie, because Zatanna more or less made her first appearances just kind of cameoing in other superhero stories, like, just, like, appearing in their storyline, being like, I'm looking for my father, can you help me find my father, kind of thing. So you get introduced to her through a series of, like, crossovers, more or less. What if the Zatanna movie was like a Zatanna team-up movie, where she's running into these characters like Hawkman and Green Arrow and Elongated Man, like throughout the course of her adventure. And as it was stated earlier, she like learned how to train her abilities over time. Like while searching for her father is when she started discovering what her powers were capable of. So you could say, well, why is it that she doesn't just like summon her father to her by speaking backwards? And it's like, well, maybe she doesn't know like the limitations of what she can do. Maybe she's afraid of what might happen if she like does the spell incorrectly or something like that. But I think that would allow you to introduce maybe new characters to the DC universe, because she doesn't have to like team up with Hawkman. She could potentially team up with like Static Shock because they want to introduce him to the DCEU, or Blue Beetle, another character that they want to introduce to the DCEU. You know, she could meet up with all these different characters, setting up the seeds for their future movies while on the search for her father, and we can get to know her while getting to know these like other like superheroes over the course of her adventure. And we get to see like cool superhero team up action stuff. I think that would be great. Definitely let me know your thoughts on that, like in the comment section below or on our Discord. Because I just think that would be like a great way to not only have like a Zatanna solo movie, but also to let us see like the wider DC universe as she explores searching for her father. Continuing on, eventually Zatanna learned her father had been stolen away to a mystical realm called Karma by a sorceress named Allura. So, Zatanna returned to her life as a traveling stage magician and superhero, teaming up with many of the friends and heroes she had met during her quest. In time, Zatanna became a valuable member of the superhero community and was offered official membership in the Justice League of America. So, the way that they phrase that sounds kind of weird, because it says eventually, Zatanna learned her father had been stolen away to a mystical realm called Karma by a sorceress named Allura. But it doesn't say, and then Zatanna and the Justice League go in and like save her dad. It's just kind of like, oh, she learned where her dad was. He got stolen? Cool, I'm gonna go back to being a stage magician. Like I feel like there's a gap there. Wouldn't something have happened in between where maybe she goes to the realm to like save her dad or something? I don't know. Moving on. PostCrisis, 1986 to 2011. Following 1986's Crisis on Infinite Earths, Zatanna appeared in the 1990s Book of Magic limited series, in which she looked after a young boy named Timothy Hunter, who was destined to become the most powerful wizard in the world. Now, that would be an interesting Zatanna movie, to be honest, like if they decided to adapt this storyline. I have not read Books of Magic, but to me, it doesn't sound like it would be a Zatanna focused story. It would maybe be a story focused more on Timothy Hunter and his development. So I doubt that that would be like the first Zatanna movie we got. You know, I don't think it's going to be like a Zatanna movie, but it's actually really a Timothy Hunter movie kind of thing. Maybe we could see that storyline adapted into like a sequel or like a spin-off from Zatanna, you know, if the first film is successful. We'd have to see. But that definitely is like an interesting, essential storyline for Zatanna. Because it definitely sounds like not the most important character in that story kind of position. But then again, I don't know. Maybe in Books of Magic, the story is just as much about Zatanna as it is about Timothy Hunter. Maybe it's about their relationship to each other and how she acts as his mentor, and maybe she acts as like an inspiration for him. You know, it could be cool. We'd have to see. Continuing on. Later, Zatanna resumed her responsibilities as a member of the Justice League of America, aiding the team in magic-related incidents. One such occasion saw members of the League come together to elect a magical lobotomization of the villain Dr. Light, following his sexual assault of Sue Dibney, the wife of Elongated Man. Zatanna was asked to perform the procedure in secret, prompting the events of 2004's Identity Crisis, which drove a wedge in the League and resulted in a total breakdown of trust between Zatanna and some of her former teammates, including Batman. Do I think we'll ever get an Identity Crisis movie? Probably not. It's really weird territory to touch on. You would probably need to make the movie PG-13 or maybe even rated R, because the concepts are just kind of dark. And it doesn't really seem like a family-friendly romp that you would get toys of at McDonald's. But you never know. Maybe they might do something with it. I don't think we'd see Identity Crisis anytime soon. And if we did see it, I feel like they'd probably change quite a few elements of the story. One thing that I want to highlight on before we continue. They mention that Zatanna resumed her responsibilities as a member of the Justice League of America, which implies that when she was looking after Timothy Hunter, she wasn't a member of the team. I guess she took like a hiatus from the team to watch over Timothy Hunter, which makes me curious how'd that end? Like after she like helps mentor him, is he now the most powerful wizard in the world? Like is she like my job is done and then she returns back to the JLA? It does somewhat make me interested in wanting to know more about Timothy Hunter and where that story went. Maybe I'll read that limited series or something. I don't know. But I also noticed that it mentions that she aids the team in magic related incidents. And this is something that I really do want to point out. Zatanna, a lot of times, does get put in situations where it's like, it's a magic thing. Oh no, it's a magic related thing. We gotta get Zatanna specifically. But it seems like a weird thing to do, right? Zatanna's powers aren't like, I can do anything, but only if I fight a magic person. If anything, when fighting a magic person, she might be at like the biggest disadvantage she possibly could be. Because most like individuals, I don't think have like a strong defense against magic attacks. You know? So if you had her fight like a wizard might know like a counter spell or like a magic shield to like deflect the spell or a silent spell to stop her from talking or any number of defenses against magic. It seems like you would probably call on Zatanna all the time or maybe even only when you're not fighting a magic person. What can Batman's rogue gallery, like all of Batman's villains, what can any of them do against Zatanna? Like if Zatanna rolled up on Arkham Asylum, how do you beat her, right? You know, like I feel like it's stuff like that that sounds really confusing to me. Like why would you call her in for the magic stuff? Call her in for all the non-magic stuff. Superman's an alien. They don't call Superman only when there's alien shit. Batman's a normal guy for the most part. I mean, he's pretty beyond normal, but you get what I mean. He's like a non-superpowered dude. They don't call him only when there's non-superpowered stuff. Wonder Woman's a god. They don't call her only when there's god stuff going on. It just seems odd that she gets pigeonholed as like the magic person on the league instead of just being like the best person on the league because she can just do whatever she wants. So really weird. I don't understand why that's like a weird like niche that she's always put into because it seems like the wrong niche if anything. Over time, Zatanna's relationship with her fellow heroes began to mend. It was revealed that her father had been a mentor in escape artistry to Bruce Wayne and a friend of his late father, Thomas, which provided common ground between her and Batman. Despite the bad blood now between them, Batman still looked to Zatanna for aid when mystical crises came to Gotham, even trusting her to save the life of Catwoman after an attack by the villain Hush. So, when it comes to Zatanna and Bruce Wayne's relationship to one another, them having known each other as children, you end up with this weird situation with Zatanna in the DCEU, right? So, Batman in the DCEU is a Batman who's been around for like a really long time. You know what I mean? Like where he's like, I've had like a Robin who's died, I'm like older. I'm not just like a guy in my 20s who just started kind of thing. So giving him any relationship with Zatanna where it's like, oh, we knew each other like back in the day kind of thing. It would probably be a thing where it's like, oh, Zatanna, I knew your father, maybe. Like it could be something like that. Like Zatanna, I worked with your dad because he's probably closer to my age than you are. But I feel like in comic books, where you have weird comic book time, it seems like Zatanna and Bruce knew each other when they were younger, and they're now like around the same age. But I think unless you make Zatanna kind of older than I would expect her to be, because I imagine Zatanna being like in like her 20s, maybe her 30s at most, kind of thing. Where Batman in the like DCEU, I think is like 40 plus, something like that. Like to where there's like at least a 10-year gap between their age or more. It just seems like they're gonna have to do something with that if they want to keep that in there. Like they're gonna have to explain how they know each other. I think it's going to be more likely that Bruce will be like, oh yeah, like I knew your dad. I met him while I was like training or whatever. But when Batman was training, he was probably like in his like 20s or whatever. Whereas Zatanna was probably like 10 and not doing any magic stuff and wouldn't really know him that well. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to make any relationship that she really has with Batman in the films be lessened to a great extent compared to any relationship they have in the comics. At least that's my perception. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments and on our Discord. No longer an active member of the League, Zatanna joined the Sentinels of Magic, with whom she dedicated her time to protect the DC Universe from magical threats, all the while continuing her career as a public performer. So I don't understand. Oh, well, actually, I do understand. This is post Identity Crisis. It's interesting that Zatanna's character starts off as not being League affiliated, becomes League affiliated, and then runs into a situation with like Timothy Hunter where it's like, oh well, I gotta like leave the League, I gotta do like the Timothy Hunter stuff. And then she works back with the League. She's like, oh, I finished the Book of Magic limited series. And Identity Crisis happens, and she's like, oh, well, I'm not in the League anymore. It seems like she's a character that's continually, like, put into the team and then bounce out of the team throughout, like, her publication history. Like, she's not a consistent member. But the only thing that is really consistent about her is that she's always on some magic shit. It's always, like, her dealing with magical threats. And I feel like that's such a weird pigeonhole. I don't get it. Zatanna seems like she would benefit more from being on a team that wasn't magic based because her niche can be that she's like the magic person. Think about characters like Cyborg, who are like incredibly like powerful like tech based heroes. If Cyborg was on a team of tech based heroes, doesn't that kind of make Cyborg redundant? Like, why would you want to have Cyborg on a team of tech based heroes? He fits better on the Justice League, where he is the tech guy and he can do the tech stuff for the Justice League. But I guess you could make a similar argument for Zatanna. She fits better on like the normal Justice League so that she can be the magic person for the Justice League. But at the same time, notice they don't bench Cyborg if it's not like tech based. He still goes with them even if it's not a technology based thing. And I feel like Zatanna should be the same way. She should just be riding with them, regardless of the threat, and be able to use her magic to help. I hope that in the movies, Zatanna isn't just limited to maybe being like a member of Justice League Dark or something. Because the Justice League, especially considering the fact that like the Snyder Cut, Zack Snyder says is not a part of the canon, seems fairly underpowered and could probably benefit from having Zatanna on the team. The Snyder Cut Justice League is way stronger than the Whedon Cut Justice League, but the Whedon Cut Justice League is what we have in this continuity. So, please hit us up with Zatanna being on the League as she was originally, and please don't pigeonhole her into a Sentinels of Magic or like Justice League Dark kind of position. Speaking of Justice League Dark, the New 52, 2011 to 2016. Following 2011's continuity-altering Flashpoint, Zatanna joined the mystically oriented Justice League Dark. In her new team, she helped defend the DC Universe from cosmic threats alongside other magic-based heroes like John Constantine, Swamp Thing, and Etrigan the Demon. Justice League Dark is likely the direction that they're going to take Zatanna in, especially since Justice League Dark is like one of the more recent, like Zatanna storyline things. Because the New 52 wasn't that long ago. It was like 10 years ago kind of thing. So I imagine they likely are going to pull from more recent storylines regarding Zatanna. Though I think I personally would really like it if they dug back to like her original origins. I'm normally not an origin story fan, but I feel like her origin is told in a very interesting way. It's about a woman trying to search for her father, who developed powers over the course of her adventure, while also exploring across the DC universe and meeting a variety of heroes that maybe we haven't seen before in film. So, that to me sounds cooler than Zatanna as a member of a team that has a bunch of other magic people on it, so she's just like magic person number 5 of the magic squad. I think that's kind of lame. Continuing on. Rebirth, 2016 to present. Following the events of 2016's DC Universe Rebirth number 1, a renewed friendship with Batman, whom she has returned to Gotham City to assist. In her free time, she continues to operate as a magician and a stage performer. The way that they describe her in Rebirth is as if she's like, hey, me and Batman hanging out all the time. Because they're like, she went back to Gotham City to help him, but notice they don't say, and she's still with Justice League Dark and still doing Justice League Dark stuff. Or, oh, she's back on the League and she's doing League stuff. They describe it as if, like, she's now, like, a member of the Bat family and she's specifically doing stuff with Batman. And the only other thing she's doing is, like, her being a stage performer. Which I don't think is accurate, but honestly, I don't know. I didn't read a lot of Justice League Dark in Rebirth, so I don't know if she's still on the team in Rebirth. And if she is actually just only doing Batman stuff, if so, that's weird. that seems really odd. But who knows? Team affiliations. She's been a member of the Justice League of America, Justice League Dark, the Sentinels of Magic, and the Seven Soldiers of Victory. Appearances in other media. She has a movie that's currently being worked on that wouldn't be listed here because, they haven't made it yet. But television. She's made guest appearances and cameos in Smallville, Batman Animated Series, Gotham Girls, DC Superhero Girls, where she's like a main character, Justice League Action, Young Justice, Batman Beyond, and Justice League Unlimited. I've seen all of Batman Beyond multiple times. I'm like, oh, I don't remember Zatanna being in Batman Beyond. I kind of want to see that now. Film, main character appearances, Justice League Dark, and then for like the animated film. And then video games, she's appeared in Justice League Heroes, DC Universe Online, Injustice Gods Among Us, Infinite Crisis, and Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham. And yeah, that's everything. That's the entire DC Universe Encyclopedia article on Zatanna. What do you guys think? Definitely let me know your comments in the comment section below and on our Discord. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black the One Only, logging out. If you guys want to help support the channel, feel free to donate to our Cash App, link in the description box below. And make sure you smash that subscribe button because I do AI Dungeon 2 videos every day. And sometimes I dip my feet into, the superhero comic book stuff. Peace, guys. Check it out.